My name is Dawn Whitaker, and I'm 35 years old. I once thought weddings were about love, unity, and the people who'd stand beside you on the most meaningful day of your life. But my wedding shattered that belief, revealing a truth more painful than I ever expected. The ceremony itself was breathtaking. On a beach in San Diego, my husband beside me, my grandmother guiding me down the aisle. The cheers, the golden sunset, everything seemed flawless, except for the 2 empty chairs where my parents should have been. I accepted their excuse for missing it. Yet only days later, photos from Hawaii told the real story. They'd chosen somewhere else, someone else, leaving me alone on the day I needed them most. Then came the money they sent to make amends. I mailed it back with a message as cold as the betrayal. Keep it. You'll need it for what's next. If you've ever been betrayed by your own family, leave a comment below. Would you forgive them or cut them off completely? I'd like to hear your story. Months before the ceremony, I had thrown myself into planning, determined to make it perfect despite the tight finances. As a preschool teacher in San Diego, I poured heart and energy into DIY touches with Blaine, handwritten vows on note cards, and favors made from seashells we gathered ourselves. The beach setting felt meant to be. Sunset views, a driftwood arch, nothing grand but deeply personal. We tracked every expense, choosing wildflowers over big arrangements, and friends volunteered for the cake bake-off. My parents, living in Tucson, ran a small leather goods shop, hand-stitching belts and wallets for tourists passing through the desert trails. They were always quick to boast about my older sister Kendra's achievements, how she'd built her own boutique in Hawaii with her husband and kids, turning it into a hotspot for custom bags. Family dinners on their rare visits became showcases of Kendra's latest expansion, her social media features, and local influencer shoutouts, while my teaching job earned a polite smile at best. When I called to share my wedding plans, their response felt distant through the line. Mom, Amber, complained that her arthritis was acting up badly in Arizona's dry heat, making long drives or flights impossible. Dad, Chad, chimed in about the store being slammed, summer crowds, overflowing orders, long nights of stitching. "We're happy for you, Dawn," Mom said, her voice heavy with duty instead of joy. Those calls brought back memories I'd buried deep, like when they poured store profits into Kendra's startup, flying out multiple times to help her stock shelves, yet skipped my college graduation because the shop couldn't close, or birthdays where Kendra's gifts were lavish, handcrafted leather straight from their store, while mine was a plain card with vague promises that never came true. Dad once said Kendra's ambition inspired him, hinting that I should hustle harder like her. Through it all, Blaine kept me steady, joining planning calls, brainstorming guest lists, and simple rehearsal dinner ideas at a local taco stand. He could always tell when my mood sank after talking to them. He'd wrap his hands over my shoulders, grounding me as I vented about the favoritism. "Focus on us," he'd remind me, opening our shared spreadsheet, ready to keep building our day together. Still, I drafted careful emails outlining every detail: direct flights from Tucson to San Diego under 2 hours, hotel blocks by the high, beach even offers to cover shuttle rides or mobility aids for Mom's joints. The distance between us widened quietly. Their holiday cards always showcased Kendra's family front and center, captions gushing over her kids' milestones, while my life was barely a footnote. I double-checked RSVPs, attaching maps and meal options, hoping the organized plans might convince them. Dad's lone reply was vague. "We'll see how health's doing," echoing Mom's concerns about travel worsening her condition. Their store's busy season soon became the ultimate excuse: peak sales from hikers craving new gear. One evening, Blaine and I walked the beach venue, marking spots for chairs and the aisle runner, his hand in mine steadying the doubt. I texted photos of the setup, asking for input on seating for Tucson relatives. Silence. Then came a group chat ping, Kendra's Hawaii sunset pics. Dad reacted with hearts, Mom added praise. The contrast burned. Easy engagement with her, total indifference toward me. Through every vendor meeting and dress fitting, I clung to optimism, sealing beach-themed invites with wax stamps and personal touches. Blaine read our vows aloud one night, his steady tone grounding me in what mattered. Still, my inbox filled with silence from them, even as their shop's online feed overflowed. New leather arrivals, Kendra tagged in promo shots. The message was clear, her spotlight, my shadows. As the final weeks crept in, desperation took over. I called daily, voice cracking as I offered last-minute travel options. Wheelchair vans, flexible flights, even trains. Mom repeated the same lines, her arthritis locking her joints stiff, unable to endure turbulence or humidity. Dad added that custom saddle orders were piling up. Ranchers waiting, heat delays, endless work at the bench. "It's just not feasible, Dawn," he sighed, hanging up before I could suggest alternatives. The wedding morning bloomed bright, sea breeze laced with flowers as guests arrived. Grandma Muriel Tate took my arm for the aisle walk, her grip firm, her whispers steadying through my veil. The sand shifted beneath us, waves soft against our vows. Tucson's reserved seats stayed empty, a silent wound among the rows. Blaine pulled me close for our first dance beneath the string lights, laughter echoing through toasts about our adventures, plates of grilled seafood circling, music lifting the night. Yet, between smiles, I kept glancing toward the entrance, half convinced they'd appear late, breathless with apologies and flowers. They didn't. After the reception ended, hugs and goodbyes faded into the quiet hum of cleanup. Back home, I collapsed on the couch, scrolling to unwind, until the notifications hit. Instagram stories first, a repost, then full reels of palm trees and turquoise waves. There they were, my parents, radiant in floral shirts beside Kendra's family at a Hawaiian luau, plates piled high, leis around their necks. Another swipe. Yacht. Deck photos, champagne glasses raised, Kendra's kids splashing in the background. Captions about family recharging time, geotags confirming it, Hawaii. The timestamps aligned perfectly with my wedding ceremony. My stomach knotted, hands trembling as I zoomed in on their smiling faces. No sign of illness, no hint of guilt. Fury surged. I hit redial instinctively, phone pressed tight to my ear. Mom answered on the first ring, her tone shifting from shock to stammer when I demanded an explanation. It was a last-minute thing. Kendra set it up for family reconnection, she fumbled. Dad's voice echoed faintly, insisting the invite came suddenly after a store slowdown. They claimed they didn't realize the overlap until the flight, that health issues still played a part. "We didn't want to disappoint you more," Dad muttered weakly, but the yacht scenes mocked every word. I pushed harder, voice trembling, calling out the vanished arthritis, the laughter under tropical skies. Mom deflected, saying Kendra needed them for extra help, while Dad mumbled something about the trip being funded by shop profits. Excuses stacked one over another like mismatched leather scraps. Unplanned fares, sudden tickets, anything to cover their choice. The call dragged on, filled with shallow half-admissions and guilt-laced pauses. Blaine walked in mid-conversation, reading my face instantly, silently mouthing, "What happened?" I motioned Blaine to stay quiet, grilling them on why there'd been no cancellation texts during the ceremony. Silence lingered until Mom whispered a thin apology, Dad promising to explain soon in person. Hanging up left me hollow, the phone still lit with their carefree Hawaiian smiles clashing against my memory of empty seats. A few days later, a plain envelope from Tucson arrived on my doorstep. Inside was a neatly folded $10,000 check tucked into a store-bought card. Generic wedding icons printed beside a typed message about eternal bliss. No personal lines, just their signatures squeezed at the bottom, as if money could erase the betrayal and gloss over their absence. The memo read, "Wedding gift." It landed like a transaction, Guilt disguised as generosity. I sat at the kitchen table, pen hovering, and began writing. My letter poured out pages of words money couldn't buy. Their presence at my vows. The support that never came. I reminded them of their old promises about the leather store inheritance. How they'd once said it would come to me, the steady one, after teaching stints and rented apartments. I attached screenshots of texts where Dad mentioned it during shop visits, always stressing stability over Kendra's flashy ventures. I sealed it all, letter, check, receipts, and addressed it back to their Tucson store. Blaine watched as I printed it, nodding at my resolve. "Feels right," he said, snapping a quick photo of the envelope for records. We both agreed. It screamed hush money, not care. A shortcut to quiet guilt instead of facing what they'd done. That afternoon, Grandma Muriel called from California, asking cheerfully about the honeymoon and whether my parents had managed the travel okay. I broke. I told her everything. The Hawaii posts, the excuses crumbling under timestamps, the full betrayal. She gasped, promising discretion, but unable to hide her outrage. Within days, word rippled through the Arizona branch of the family. My phone buzzed nonstop, texts from cousins and aunts. One aunt recalled Dad gifting Kendra prime leather scraps for her boutique, while I got hand-me-down tools. A cousin vented about how they'd skipped my events but flew to Hawaii for Kendra's grand openings. "We've all seen this coming," one wrote. Another cousin shared screenshots from a group chat, relatives piecing together the favoritism over years of holidays, where Kendra monopolized every toast. By midweek, my parents called again. Dad leading with tired defenses about the Hawaii trip being business-related, tied to Kendra's boutique crisis. Her success, he said, pulled them in as advisors. Mom backed him, framing it as fair support for the high achiever, while my life was steady. "We thought the check showed love," Dad said. Voice clipped when I told him it was already returned. I countered calmly about their broken promises, the inheritance talks that had gone silent. They dodged again, muttering about wills and timing. Quietly, I hit record, letting their explanations flow. They justified every choice. Kendra's demands, store profits dipping unless tied to her, emotional pulls from her kids needing grandparent time. It went on. Their tone switching between guilt and self-defense. Favoritism rebranded as motivation. Blaine joined halfway, his questions sharp, pressing on the inheritance switch. They fumbled, Dad slipping that the store's real value now depended on Kendra's marketing savvy. When the call ended, I saved the audio, label, date, everything. I filed it alongside the letter copy, screenshots, and old texts. A paper trail of unequal treatment stretching years. Cousins kept sending solidarity messages. One dug up old emails from Mom praising Kendra's hustle in family newsletters while glossing over my classroom wins. An uncle offered to mediate but changed his mind after hearing parts of the recording. Grandma Muriel followed with a firm voice note, confirming she'd quietly shared the truth among relatives. The story spread, an unspoken audit of fairness. Soon I got the tracking ping, the returned package en route, carrying my words back to their doorstep. Blaine helped me organize everything, proof, files, even notes on inheritance law. When more texts came from my parents asking about the check, I left them unread. Letting silence say what needed to be said. Family group chats buzzed with speculation, anonymous mentions of favoritism fallout. Aunts shared supportive notes, cousins swapped memories of lopsided gifts and attention. No effort from me. Just their own guilt surfacing through shared stories. A week later, a knock echoed through the house. I peered through the peephole. Mom and Dad, road-worn and dusty, standing under the porch light. Their eyes were heavy, shoulders slumped, travel fatigue etched deep. Blaine opened the door. The air turned thick as they stepped inside, clutching water bottles, murmuring about wanting to talk face to face. They didn't waste time. Dad launched into excuses about Kendra's boutique hitting financial trouble. Supplier costs spiking, forcing emergency loans they'd sent to help. Mom nodded, voice quivering as she spoke of being torn. 2 daughters, both in need, but Kendra's pleas hitting harder because of her kids, her stress, her business. While my life appeared more independent, the imbalance was impossible to ignore. We felt obligated, Dad explained, his hands tracing invisible scales, the impossible task of dividing time and resources evenly. I countered with a history of favoritism, starting sophomore year, when they cut my tuition payments to fund Kendra's trade show trips for leather sourcing. Birthdays made the pattern louder. Her packages brimmed with premium prototypes, while mine came as slim envelopes. Dad once joked her ambition earned bonuses. At my high school award ceremonies, their seats sat empty, yet they cheered front row for Kendra's business pitches. Even the family newsletter slanted toward her spotlight. Amber admitted the joint pain was real, but said the Hawaii air eased it. A reset, before returning to Tucson's store chaos. Chad backed her, insisting Kendra deserved priority for her grind. Late nights sketching prototypes, chasing clients, fueling family pride, unlike my classroom routine. She's pushing limits we admire, he argued, voice steady, defending her edge in support. Blaine sat beside me, grounding me as I set firm boundaries. No more excuses disguised as obligations. Accountability before reconciliation. Show change through actions, not errands, I said, my eyes locked on theirs. The room grew heavy with my terms, proof through balance or permanent distance. They listened. Mom's tears fell over mistakes and fairness. Dad nodded, muttering about revising the will, fair shares beyond Kendra's grasp. We'll talk to the lawyer next week, he promised, sketching asset splits on a napkin as if to prove intent. Amber echoed his words, pledging to fix the ledgers and rally relatives for a united front. The goodbye stretched awkwardly, half hugs, unfinished apologies. As they loaded the car, Dad paused, reiterating the will change. Mom added a quiet sorry, saying the trip hadn't bridged the gap. Blaine closed the door behind them. Their car disappeared down the desert road, leaving echoes of half-kept promises. I paced the silence they left, their words looping in my head. Kendra's drive versus my stability. Blaine brewed tea, noting how that napkin plan felt empty without follow-through. Their frazzled arrival had screamed desperation, not sincerity. Neighbors waved as the taillights vanished, unaware of the emotional miles that still stretched between us. Moments after they left, I opened the family Facebook group. My fingers flew. Screenshots of Hawaii photos, timestamps disproving illness, scans of the returned check blurred for privacy, and evidence of favoritism, uneven holidays, skipped milestones. I captioned it simply, facts on the table. No spins, notifications exploded. Grandma Muriel led with heart emojis and a long comment. She'd noticed for years how things tilted toward Kendra. Cousins joined in, recalling Dad's bias in store chores, Kendra designing, them doing grunt work. Aunts added memories of vacations rerouted to her interests. Hours later, Kendra flooded my DMs with defenses, Tucson store struggles, seasonal losses, selfish of me to reject the check. They're exhausted keeping the business alive and you throw it back? She wrote, claiming Hawaii was a morale boost, not indulgence. Her words hit hard, guilt-wrapped in loyalty. But I stayed calm, replying that bonds weren't built on delayed checks or apology trips. Show it in consistency, I ended. No attachments. Just truth. By morning, Tucson was buzzing. Loyal customers found the post and turned to Yelp. 1-star reviews pouring in. Owners skipped their daughter's wedding for a sibling trip. Can't trust that, one wrote. Another complained of sloppy leather, distracted management. Blaine kept watch on the feeds, flagging troll comments and highlighting supportive ones, relatives praising my stance. Breathe, he whispered, pulling me from the screen as threads grew. Extended family vowed distance until change. An uncle even pulled on inheritance fairness. Yelp threads spread to local hiking groups, debating ethics and boycotts. Ratings dropped. Kendra replied publicly, just a family misunderstanding. But the backlash swelled. Shares piled up, tagging the shop. Her empire, once spotless, was unraveling, not by revenge, but by revelation. Muriel stepped in to calm the chaos, guiding her circle toward productive reflection rather than more flames. Blaine bookmarked critical posts, quietly compiling notes in case they were needed later. His steady presence cut through the online storm. Group admins eventually locked the most heated threads, but the message had already landed. Favoritism exposed, reputation collapsing. Weeks of silence followed, tension brewing in the absence of contact. Then Grandma called, voice trembling with the latest from the Arizona gossip chain. The parents had erupted, an argument over years of bias boiling into full-blown confrontation. Mom accused Dad of endlessly favoring Kendra, of pouring resources into her ventures while leaving me with leftovers. Their shouting echoed through the store's back room. Amber threw receipts on the table, proof of years of skewed checks funding Kendra's trips, while my needs were penciled in the margins. Chad fired back, calling it smart investment and proven drive. But the shop couldn't survive the fallout. Yelp had buried it. One-star reviews rolled in like a dust storm. Locals turned away, canceling orders and condemning the family-run fraud. Ranchers and hikers spread word of the hypocrisy, and foot traffic evaporated in the Arizona heat. Shelves gathered dust, leather scraps curling in still air. Then my lawyer reached out unprompted. He'd uncovered old emails from Dad, promising the store to me for stability's sake, contrasting me as grounded against Kendra's recklessness. Yet the notarized will had been switched, handing it to her under the guise of business acumen. Armed with dated drafts and corroborating testimonies, we took it to probate court. The deception was undeniable. Timelines, signatures, and witness accounts exposed fraud in the revision. The judge ruled in my favor, ownership transferred outright. No delays, no appeals. Kendra's outrage shook what was left of the family. She cut off Mom and Dad entirely, furious over the inheritance loss. They, in turn, sank beneath unpaid supplier debts and rising lease fees. No more Hawaii escapes. Just silence in the Tucson heat, aisles stripped bare. I blocked their numbers, emails, everything, protecting the calm I'd fought to build. A month after the verdict, my focus shifted fully to the future. Blaine and I bought a small bungalow in the San Diego suburbs, painting walls and planting succulents in the yard. Evenings filled with laughter, friends around the grill, board games, soft music. Grandma Muriel became our bridge, visiting often and hosting gentle family gatherings that replaced tension with warmth. Over chili pots and card games, she led quiet talks about healing the scars of favoritism, guiding reflections without blame. Back in Tucson, the store didn't recover. Bankruptcy followed, windows papered with auction signs. The legacy unraveled. Decades of stitching ended in silence. Kendra stayed in Hawaii, isolated, her boutique struggling without family backup. My boundaries, once seen as harsh, proved to be the lock protecting my peace. I learned that blood alone doesn't define kin. True family shows up steadily, sincerely, and stays when the storm hits.